Okay, sir. Uh, the patient Abdul Qureshi, 22-year-old male, working as a security guard, living in Andheri, hailing from Kashmir, came to the OPD with chief complaints of breathlessness since 6 months, chest pain since 6 months, and palpitations since 3 months. The patient was apparently all right 6 months back when he began to experience breathlessness, which was insidious in onset, occurred on moderate activity, and has progressively increased to even occur on slight activity. The breathlessness is not associated with cough. The patient also experiences breathlessness in lying down position since past 3 months. He has had 2 to 3 episodes of paroxysmal nocturnal dyspnea in the past 3 months when he had to get up from sleep due to air hunger and stayed awake for 10 to 15 minutes, after which he felt comfortable. The patient also had a history of chest pain since 6 months, which was on the right side, substernal region, pressing in nature, non-radiating type, lasting for 10 to 15 minutes, occurring on exertion and relieved on stress. The patient also had history of palpitations since past 3 months, which occurred on exertion. There was no history of syncope, no history of cough, no history of fever or joint pain, no history of cyanotic spells, uh, no history of pedal edema, no history of facial puffing, no history of any falls or seizures.
Okay. So Tanmay, can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
So your chief complaint was breathlessness and chest pain.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Continue.
Okay. The patient has no history of diabetes, asthma, hypertension, or tuberculosis or any tuberculosis contact. The patient has no history of fever and fever with fleeting joint pains during childhood.
Okay. There is no history. Tell me what is Jacquard's arthritis or Jacquard's joint? You get that in rheumatic fever.
Rheumatic fever.
So what is actually? How can you describe that? Jacquard's joints.
Sorry.
Okay, it is periarticular fibrosis, but it is reversible. And as you said, rheumatic fever attacks, it is polyarthritis, migrating polyarthritis. But Jacquard joints are basically the same only, but they have some periarticular fibrosis. Okay, continue.
Okay. The patient has the patient's mother had similar complaints. There is no other significant family history. The patient the patient consumes a vegetarian diet. The sleep-wake cycle is normal. The bowel bladder habits are regular.
Did the patient have symptoms of rheumatic fever in the past?
No, sir.
Can you just enumerate the Jones criteria of rheumatic fever? Major, minor, and essential?
Sir, according to Jones criteria, in the high risk category, there are two categories: high risk and low risk. In the high risk category, either it should be polyarthritis or monoarthritis or polyarthralgia. In the low risk, it should be either polyarthritis or monoarthritis. Then the common in both high risk and low risk would be erythema nodosum, subcutaneous nodules,
Sydenham scoria.
Sydenham scoria and
carditis.
Then carditis. So
what is the commonest in them? You talked about polyarthritis. You talked about carditis. You talked about Sydenham scoria. Then subcutaneous nodules and erythema marginatum, which is the commonest and which is the rarest.
So carditis would be the commonest and rarest would be Sydenham scoria.
Erythema marginatum is the rarest, and the commonest is as you said, carditis or polyarthritis. Okay. In children, how do rheumatic fever will present? And in adults, is there any difference between how rheumatic fever presentation in children versus adults?
So in children at the age of 10 to 15 at the age of 10 to 15 years, there would be high grade fever with fleeting joint pains and arthritis, which would subside without any which would subside after few days without any
Rheumatic
major.
fever, Tanmay, rheumatic fever in children present more with carditis, while rheumatic fever in adults will present more with arthritis.
Okay.
Okay. So that's the difference between the two. That is the commonest difference between the two. Okay, continue. So there were no symptoms of rheumatic fever.
No, sir.
Okay. Continue.
The patient denies any addition to alcohol, smoking, or tobacco consumption. The sleep-wake cycle is normal. There is no loss of appetite, and there is no weight loss.
Okay.
So, provisional diagnosis.
So you would like to summarize the positive findings in your case.
Okay. The patient, Abdul Qureshi, 22-year-old male, having breathlessness since 6 months, chest pain since 6 months, palpitation since 3 months, having orthopnea and episodes of paroxysmal nocturnal dyspnea, is most likely a case of valvular heart disease due to non-rheumatic origin,
Okay.
probably involving the mitral or aortic valve.
Okay. You feel it is, so you say it is cardiac, then you say it is valvular. You feel it is
Yes,
stenotic or regurgitant?
So it is most likely regurgitant as patient does not have any episodes of syncope. So it is most likely a regurgitant lesion. And
Regurgitation is more with palpitation. Is more associated with palpitation.
Yeah.
While stenosis is more associated with breathlessness.
Breathlessness.
Okay. So continue with your general examination.
The patient was examined with due consent in a well-lit room in supine position. He is conscious, coherent, and well-oriented to time, place, person, and appears in no visible distress. The patient is afebrile on touch. The pulse rate is 86 per minute, high volume, regular in rhythm, normal force and tension, and examined in the right radial artery. The peripheral pulses are well felt. On examination,
do you feel the pulses are bounding? Tanmay, do you feel the pulses bounding?
Yes, it is high volume.
High volume pulse. So,
yes,
what terminology you would like to use for the high volume pulse, bounding pulse?
So Corrigan's pulse. It is
or Water-Hammer pulse.
Water-Hammer pulse.
So what is classical or Water-Hammer pulse?
So it has a rapid upstroke, which basically signifies rapid ejection and high systolic blood pressure, and a rapid downstroke due to decreased diastolic blood pressure due to aortic runoff.
Okay, so when you examine, what maneuver you will do? So just describe how did you examine the Water-Hammer pulse? Pardon?
So we palpate the right radial artery and keep our palm on the brachial artery of the patient, and
brachial
then
or on the forearm. You can keep the palm on the forearm.
On the forearm.
Yes.
And then we suddenly lift his hand upwards, and when we do that, then due to aortic runoff, we feel pulsations on the hand, and the subsequent next pulsation would be high volume because of the regurgitant blood.
See, the thing is, when you lift the hand, the radial pulse will suddenly your fingers won't feel the radial pulse.
Yes.
While the forearm will feel there is a pulse when you palpate at the forearm level. So that would be bounding pulse. And what is the pathophysiology of the Water-Hammer pulse?
So
it is
because it is a regurgitant lesion. So there is increased blood in the left ventricle. So during systole, due to Frank-Starling law, there would be higher force of contraction. So it would be a rapid upstroke in the systole, and during diastole, because of Venturi effect, so there would be, because of aortic regurgitation and because of peripheral vasodilatation, there would be runoff, and so it would lead to a rapid fall in blood pressure and rapid diastolic dip.
Yes, right. So the two things which are very important in Water-Hammer pulse is or in aortic regurgitation lesions there is a decreased SPR, decrease in systemic vascular resistance. and therefore there is a diastolic runoff of the pulse of the blood, and there is a regurgitation of the blood, and therefore you get a bounding type of pulse and a high pulse pressure. So
Yes,
you
sir.
have a systolic pressure which is high and diastolic which is very low. Actually, the vessel wall is empty during the diastole, while in systole you get a high blood pressure or you get a bounding pulse because of the high blood flow, and then suddenly the blood vessel lumen becomes empty, and therefore you have a diastolic pressure which is very low. Okay, so a systolic, so the regurgitant lesion as well as there is a decrease in systemic vascular resistance. That is a main cause why you get all the peripheral signs in aortic regurgitation. Okay, continue.
Okay. The blood pressure in the right brachial artery in supine position is 120 by 60 mm of Hg, and in the standing
So what is the
position,
pulse?
yes, sir.
So what is the pulse pressure?
So pulse pressure is 60 mm of Hg.
Yes. Okay. What does it suggest?
So wide pulse pressure, it suggests diastolic runoff, and because of
no, regarding the regurgitant lesion.
Yeah,
regarding the regurgitant lesion. So can you grade that lesion? Mild, moderate, severe on pulse pressure.
Sir, if it is more than 60, then it is severe. If it is 40 to 60, then it is moderate, and and less than 40, it is mild.
Mild, yes. Okay, so you were continuing with the standing blood pressure. Continue.
Yeah, in standing position, the blood pressure is 110 by 55 mm of Hg, and the lower limb blood pressure could not be examined.
Okay. Why you were not able to examine the lower limb blood pressure?
So cuff, because of unavailability of cuff.
Okay, so what if you want to measure the blood pressure in the lower limb, what should be the width of the cuff and what should be the length of the cuff?
So it should be 25 centimeter long for the femoral artery, which is almost double of what we use.
No, I'm talking about the width and the length of the cuff. Simple question. What should be the width? What should be the length? What is the normal blood pressure cuff width and length?
So length is 12.5 centimeter and
width is 12.5 centimeter and the length of the cuff is 25 centimeter.
Okay.
So ideally, when you put the blood pressure cuff over the arm, the width of the cuff is 12.5 centimeter and the length of the rubber cuff we are talking about is 25 centimeter. It should cover the 2/3. It should encircle 2/3 of your arm. Okay. So when you are checking the blood pressure in the lower limb, the width of the cuff itself should be 25 centimeter. The width I'm talking, and the length is not given, but it should encircle, the rubber cuff should encircle 2/3 of your thigh. Then only you will be able to get blood pressure in the lower limb, accurate blood pressure. Okay, continue. So what are the Tanmay, what are the other indications where you want to check the blood pressure in the lower limb?
Sir, in case there is any lesion, there is an occlusion in the descending
coarctation. Coarctation of the aorta.
Or any peripheral vascular disease.
Peripheral vascular disease. Any other?
Then
dissection of the aorta. When there was dissection, you will get unequal blood pressures. Any other? Where you can get unequal blood pressure.
PDA.
PDA, no. When you have a embolus phenomenon or thrombus.
Okay.
In the aorta, which is occluding the aorta, and therefore you are having inequality of blood pressure. So few causes of unequal blood pressures are, it is coarctation of the aorta, aortoarteritis. You have a thrombus occluding the aorta or atherosclerotic aorta. Okay, so these are few conditions where you require the measuring the blood pressure in all four limbs. Okay, continue.
Respiratory rate is 16 per minute. There is no palar, no icterus, no cyanosis or clubbing or lymphadenopathy. On head-to-toe examination, there is no bobbing of forehead. There is no.
Tanmay, if you want to summarize, you can say whether peripheral signs of aortic regurgitation are present or they are absent.
Sir, actually, some signs were present, like there were capillary pulsations were felt. Capillary pulsations were visible, so Quincke's sign was positive.
Yes. Then.
So only Quincke's sign was positive and Landolfi's sign was positive. Other signs were absent.
So just enumerate the peripheral signs of AR.
Sir,
it's a very common examination question. This is very common.
Yes.
So enumerate the signs.
Sir, Demoset sign is bobbing of the forehead. Quincke's sign is capillary pulsations. Then Mueller's sign is
nail bed. In the nail bed.
In the nail bed. Mueller's sign is pulsation of the uvula. Gerhard's sign is pulsation of the spleen. Then Rosenbach sign is pulsation of the liver. Hill's sign is when the blood pressure in the lower limb is more than 25 mm of Hg of the upper limb blood pressure. Then Meine's sign is when you raise the upper limb above the forehead, there is a drop of diastolic blood pressure by 15 mm of Hg. Then Turzois sign is there is a murmur in the femoral artery on compression by the stethoscope. Then Taube's sign is pistol shots are heard in the femoral artery. Then
what is Becker's sign?
Sign is Becker's sign is pulsation of the
retinal arterioles.
Retinal arterioles. And Landolfi's sign is pupil constriction and dilatation. And Lincoln's sign is popliteal artery pulsation. And there is a sign for cervix pulsations. I can name.
And Lighthouse sign?
Lighthouse sign is blanching and alternate blanching and white of the forehead.
Forehead, okay. Flushing and blanching of the floor.
Flushing and blanching of forehead.
Okay. Forehead. So all these signs, peripheral signs, are because of your decreased hyperdynamic circulation, and there is a decreased systemic vascular resistance.
Yes.
So what does this, if peripheral signs are present, what conclusion you make, and when they are absent, what conclusion you make?
Sir, in case there is a chronic aortic regurgitation and when there is compensation, then aortic peripheral signs would be present as the body is trying to compensate. And if it is acute severe aortic regurgitation, then body won't be able to compensate, and so signs would be absent.
Absent. So what are the causes of acute aortic regurgitation?
Sir, if there is any infective endocarditis and it may...
Any other cause of acute aortic regurgitation?
Yes. Sorry, sir, I couldn't hear.
Acute aortic regurgitation. Any other cause apart from infective endocarditis? Any other cause of acute AR? No, syphilitic is a chronic process. Syphilitic is a chronic process.
Some myocardial infarction?
No. If you have one is trauma. Listen. One is trauma. Okay. Second, trauma to the aortic aorta. First, then second is your infective endocarditis, and third is your dissection of the aorta. So if you have a dissection of the aorta, of the ascending aorta, your aortic wall is involved and you can get a aortic regurgitation. Okay. Yes, now, what are the causes of chronic aortic regurgitation?
Sir, it can either be a valvular cause or due to the aortic root. So, valvular causes, it can be rheumatic heart disease or infective endocarditis. Then, then due to myxomatous degeneration.
Any other?
Due to trauma. Then aortic. In the aortic root, it can be due to causes like Marfan syndrome.
Let us talk about. Let us talk about the aortic valve only.
Okay, sir.
Aortic valve. Any other lesion?
The bicuspid aortic valve. Yes, sir.
bicuspid aortic wall, SLE is there, rheumatoid arthritis where you can get nodules over the walls,
Yes, sir.
and
Sir,
it can cause aortic
ankylosing
regurgitation.
spondylitis.
No, that will cause aortic root dilation.
Okay.
Okay, now tell me the causes of aortic root dilation.
Sir, there can be Marfan syndrome, Ehlers-Danlos
Yes.
syndrome, ankylosing spondylitis. Then it can be
Syphilis, you said.
syphilis. Yes,
Yes.
sir. Syphilis and cystic medial degeneration of the aortic root, and
Okay. Any other?
then
Any other?
aortic
Aortoarthritis.
aortic aneurysm. Okay, aortic
Aortic aneurysm, aortoarthritis, vasculitis. Okay, large vessel vasculitis, giant cell arthritis. Okay, continue. Continue.
Yes, sir. Okay, there are no signs of infective endocarditis. There are so on systemic examination of cardiovascular system, on inspection, the chest wall.
So on general examination, Tanmay, on general examination, what did you check the JVP?
Yes, sir. JVP was not raised. The dancing carotids were absent.
Okay, so JVP was not raised. Ideally, you should tell in centimeters how much was the JVP.
Okay. Sir.
So continue then. Continue.
Okay, sir.
Coming to cardiovascular system. Okay.
Yes. So on systemic examination, on inspection, chest wall was symmetrical, no deformity was present, no abnormal pulsations were seen. On palpation, apical impulse felt at the left 6th intercostal space, 2 to 3
inspection
centimeters.
You should slightly increase. Tanmay, you should inspection or bolo na. No dilated veins.
Okay, no dilated veins, no scars of previous surgery, no. Yes. And no abnormal pulsations.
No abnormal pulsations. Okay. No scars, no sinuses, no swelling. Okay, no precordial bulging. Okay. Can you see the apical impulse?
Sir, apical impulse wasn't seen. It was felt, but it was felt. Yeah.
Okay, it was not seen. Okay.
It was not seen.
Okay. How you will see the apical impulse? Where you will go?
Sir,
you will be on the right side, left side, head.
Sir, foot end of the patient from on the left side, and we take our head to the level of the chest of the patient, and we inspect for the rise in the chest wall in near the 5th to 6th intercostal space.
Okay, continue. Palpation.
Sir, the apical impulse was felt at the left 6th intercostal space, mid-clavicular, 2 to 3 centimeter lateral to the mid-clavicular line. It was hyperdynamic in nature. There are no thrills and no palpable murmur. There are no thrills and palpable murmurs. On percussion, the chest wall extends from the left 2nd intercostal space to left 6th intercostal space, mid-clavicular line, and on the right side, the right heart border is retrosternal.
Okay. And the base में 2nd intercostal space is what is the percussion note? 2nd intercostal space.
So dull note.
Okay. If it is dull note, it means there is a left atrial enlargement or left auricular enlargement.
Okay.
So 2nd intercostal space might be resonant. Okay. Continue. Then.
Sir, on auscultation, S1, S2 heard and S1, S2 heard normal in the aortic area and in the mitral area. In the left third intercostal space, that is Erb's area, early diastolic decrescendo grade 3 murmur is heard immediately after S2, which is best heard.
Low pitch, high pitch. Sir,
it is a high pitch murmur. It is heard with the diaphragm of the stethoscope, with the patient leaning forwards in expiration, and it increases in standing position and on hand grip, and decreases with Valsalva maneuver.
And it decreases with Valsalva maneuver. Okay. So it is heard in the Erb's area.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Did you hear any murmur at the mitral area?
No, sir. No murmur was heard in the mitral area.
Okay. What is Austin-Flint's murmur then?
Sir, in case of aortic regurgitation, because of the regurgitant blood flow, the open mitral valve may vibrate, and it would lead to a radiant murmur.
Which leaflet?
So posterior leaflet.
Anterior leaflet. The anterior leaflet. The regurgitant blood will it will touch the anterior leaflet, and therefore that leaflet will vibrate and produce a Austin-Flint's murmur. Okay. Yes. What does Austin-Flint's murmur suggest?
Sir, in case it is a severe MR, then Austin-Flint.
MR, AR.
Yes, sir, AR. So it is in case it is a severe AR, then the duration of the Austin-Flint murmur intensity of the Austin-Flint murmur would increase.
Okay, no, Austin-Flint murmur itself tells that it is a severe AR and a chronic AR.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. What is cholecystole murmur?
Sir, in case of the raised apex in aortic regurgitation, a murmur is heard in the left axilla. That is cholecystole murmur.
Cholecystole murmur. Okay. Okay. Continue.
Sir, rest of there are no other murmurs heard. And
why you get a S1? S1 is soft in AR. Why S1 is soft in AR?
Sir, if
in severe AR, S1 is soft. Why it is?
In severe AR, because of high regurgitant volume, there might be dilatation of the left ventricle, and this would lead to increased duration of the diastole. So
no, the thing is I'll answer it. You get a soft S1 in AR. The reason is the regurgitant blood volume, which is more than 60% or 70%, will partially fill the ventricle. Therefore, the mitral valves will float. And once the mitral valves are floating, there is less excursion. They have to travel less to close the valve. And therefore, you get a soft AR.
Okay.
Okay. So soft S1, not AR. The soft S1 you will get. Because they are already floating in the blood, which is present in the LV. Because the LV end systolic volume or the end diastolic diameter of the LV is very large.
Yes.
And therefore the blood present, the mitral valves are floating on the blood, and therefore there is a very less excursion, and therefore they have to travel less distance, and therefore the S1 is soft. Yes. Understood? Okay.
Yes,
continue then. About pulmonary area, about aortic area.
Sir, aortic area, there is no murmurs felt in the aortic area. S1 and S2 is heard, and in the pulmonary area also S1, S2 heard. No murmurs present.
Okay. Can you grade aortic regurgitation then?
Sir, if it is a progressive
AR, listen. And what is the grade of aortic regurgitation in your patient?
Okay. Sir, in case it is sir, grading, it can be established on echocardiography. It can be established better. So based on echocardiographic finding or based on the difference on Hill's sign.
Okay, you can tell me both. Mild, moderate, severe AR.
Okay, so mild AR is when there is a difference of 25 to 40 mm of Hg in the upper limb and lower limb blood pressure. When it is 40 to 60, it is moderate, and more than 60 is severe. And in case of echocardiography, if it is a progressive AR, then there is less than 50% regurgitant volume or less than 60 ml per beat regurgitant volume, and the regurgitant orifice is less than 0.3 centimeter square. And in case of severe AR, it is...
Yes, tell.
In case of severe AR, it is more than 0.3 centimeter square, regurgitant volume is more than 60 ml per beat, and regurgitant percentage of regurgitant blood flow is more than 50%, and end systolic dimension is more than 55 millimeter, and end diastolic is more than 65 millimeter.
And diastolic more than 65 millimeters. Okay. Okay. So this is severe AR, and you have mild, moderate, and severe. Okay.
Yes, sir.
So what is the grade in your patient clinically?
So in my patient, it is mild AR because because he is not having clinical. He is not having ostensible murmur, and the lower limb blood pressure could not be examined, so that I cannot comment on. But based on clinical finding, it is mild AR, as there are no other signs, and also the patient has peripheral signs of aortic regurgitation, so that also indicates that it is not decompensated.
No, but if you have peripheral signs, it means it is moderate to severe AR. That is one thing.
Okay.
Second, your patient is symptomatic. He is having breathlessness. He is having chest pain. He is having palpitation. He is having PND. So, if you see the clinically the patient, as well as if you look at the peripheral signs, you are talking about Waterhammer pulse. So, I would say it is more of moderate to severe AR. Okay, not a mild AR. Okay, mild AR patient will hardly be symptomatic. When the patient becomes symptomatic, it means your ejection fraction is low.
Okay.
Ejection fraction is less than 55%. Okay.
Okay.
So I feel your patient has got a moderate to severe AR, more of severe AR. Okay.
Okay.
So what score you will do in what score you apply for 2D echo? When you do a 2D echo, what scoring system you will do? What is Wilkinson score?
So,
and in rheumatic fever, rheumatic heart disease, we use this Wilkinson score. What is it?
Sir, it determines whether valve replacement. It is used if valve replacement would be beneficial in the patient based on how much.
What are the parameters of Wilkinson score, and what is the cutoff of Wilkinson score?
Sorry, sir, I don't know. Okay.
Say in Wilkinson score, you look at the mobility.
Yes.
You look at the mobility of the wall. You look at the calcification of the wall. You look at the subvalvular apparatus.
Yes.
Okay, and you look at the annular dimensions. So it is more of thickness of the wall, mobility of the wall, calcification of the wall, and subvalvular apparatus. So these 4 points are very important. The score is from 0 to 4. If it is more than 8, the patient will require wall replacement.
Yes.
If it is less than 8, you can go in for a wall repair surgery.
Okay.
Okay. So, but if it is more than 8, it means that patient will require a replacement of the wall. Okay. You have completed your auscultatory findings. Any systemic other systems you want to examine? Respiratory, abdominal?
No, sir. So only auscultation. There is Durzar's murmur heard, and pistol shot was heard. That is probably. So on auscultation, Durzar's murmur was heard, and pistol shot is heard. And on other system examination, there is no abnormality detected.
The Duraz is the murmur and Trobs, whatever. You can tell that in your general examination also, in the peripheral signs of AR. But you can include that in your auscultation also. Okay. Okay. So, can you tell your final diagnosis?
Yes, sir. Okay. So, the patient, Abdul Qadir, sorry. The patient Abdul Qureshi, a 22-year-old male coming with breathlessness since 6 months, chest pain since 6 months, and the palpitation since 3 months, having
final diagnosis. Tanmay, tell your final diagnosis.
Okay. The patient is a case of valvular heart disease. Is having a regurgitant lesion in the aortic valve, and without complication of heart failure, congestive heart failure.
Severe, I would put the diagnosis as the patient has got a severe aortic regurgitant lesion. Most probably, I would like to rule out a rheumatic etiology. not in cardiac failure or without cardiac failure, with cardioembolic phenomenon or without cardioembolic phenomenon, and that is it. So you have to talk about cardiac failure, you have to talk about cardioembolic phenomenon also, and having and not in atrial fibrillation. Okay. So can you repeat the diagnosis?
Yes. So the patient is a case of regurgit of valvular heart diseases, valvular heart disease, which is severe aortic regurgitation, and I would like to rule out rheumatic etiology. And the patient doesn't have cardioembolic phenomena and is not having atrial fibrillation as a complication.
Okay. The other thing is syphilitic AR. If it is syphilitic AR, what auscultatory findings you are going to get?
Sir,
In syphilitic AR.
Sir, syphilitic AR, there would be S2 would be the murmur would be heard in the in A2 region, and also there would be a key Hodgkin murmur that would be late diastolic murmur.
Okay, in syphilitic AR, there is more of aortic root dilation, so the murmur could be on your right parasternal area.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and your A2 will be like a tambour quality. The A2 heart sound is like a tambour quality. So that is classical of syphilitic AR. Okay, so what investigation you would like to do in your patient?
Sir, first of all, ECG and echocardiography to check if there is any axis deviation and cardiomegaly is present, and also ejection fraction and the valve, the condition of the valve, in case the patient requires any further treatment.
Okay. Can you tell me one of the cause of AR because of secondary to a procedure? So which cardiac procedure can cause an aortic regurgitation?
Sir, in case aortic stenosis has been repaired, it can lead to iatrogenic aortic regurgitation.
Yes, one is that repair of the aortic stenosis or your transcatheter aortic wall replacement.
Okay.
Transcatheter aortic wall replacement post procedure, you might get aortic regurgitation. So that also has to be kept in mind in one of the etiologies of aortic regurgitation. Okay. So you will like to do a 2D echo. Any other investigation you would like to do, or you would like to go in for treatment in your patient?
Sir, sir, I would like to sir, ESR and complete blood count just to check for rheumatic etiology.
Okay, so you are talking about rheumatic etiology. So answer my question. What is the essential criteria in Jones criteria? What should be the essential criteria in Jones criteria? And what are the minor criteria?
Sir, essential criteria
is your raised ASLO. One should be a raised ASLO, history of scarlet fever, and third is throat swab. Culture should be positive.
Throat swab. Yes,
okay, so what are the minor criteria, lab criteria?
Sir, ESR should be raised more than 30, and
CRP.
Yes, sir.
ESR and CRP. And apart from that, ECG, PR prolongation.
Sir, ECG, PR prolongation,
and clinical criteria, minor criteria are fever and arthralgia. Okay. You got it?
Yes, sir.
So you have minor criteria, fever, arthralgia, prolonged PR, raised ESR, raised CRP. So these are your minor criteria of rheumatic fever. Okay. So what is the treatment, medical treatment and surgical treatment you would like to give this patient?
Sir, the patient, he is most likely severe AR, so he would need surgical treatment. So aortic valve replacement could be advised in the patient.
Medical treatment, what you would like to give to the patient?
Sir, anticoagulation therapy, post-aortic valve replacement, and also for beta blockers for symptom relief, then nitrates for decreasing the preload and work of
Beta
the heart.
blockers, beta blocker. Listen. Beta blockers. What is the role of beta blockers in your aortic regurgitation?
Sir, they would prevent the root dilatation. They would prevent root dilatation complication in aortic regurgitation.
Okay, but beta blockers. The problem with beta blockers is they decrease the heart rate. Once the heart rate is decreased,
Sir, but that would be an acute severe AR, na? It is contraindicated.
But even in your chronic AR also, if you give beta blockers, what will happen is your heart rate will decrease. Once your heart rate is decreased, your diastole is prolonged. Once your diastole is prolonged, the regurgitant volume also increases. So beta blockers should ideally be avoided in chronic AR. Acute AR mein to definitely you should not give. But in chronic AR also you should avoid it because they increase your diastole, and because of increase in diastolic time, the regurgitant volume will also increase.
Okay.
And you will get there will be evident peripheral signs.
Okay.
So our main objective is to push the blood from the left ventricle into the systemic circulation. So avoid beta blockers. So which drugs you would like to give in aortic regurgitation?
Sir, nitrates, diuretics, and ACE inhibitors can be given. And
okay, so vasodilators in aortic regurgitation.
Vasodilators.
Why they are given? Why Why vasodilators are given in aortic regurgitation?
So that regurgitant
volume decreases. And there is more of a runoff in the peripheral system.
Yes.
So more blood goes into peripheral system and less blood goes into the LV, regurgitation. Okay?
Yes, sir.
So any other, apart from that, you will give diuretics to the patient also, if the patient is in failure. Okay. So this is your medical management. Apart from that, you will give infective endocarditis prophylaxis.
Yes, sir. Penicillin prophylaxis and
okay.
Yeah.
So which conditions you would like to give infective endocarditis prophylaxis? Tell me the cardiac condition.
So in case there is a there is a involvement of valvular heart lesions. We give
lesions.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Then rheumatic heart diseases.
Okay.
Rheumatic heart disease. Then congenital heart diseases. You will give cyanotic congenital heart diseases. You will require. Even in VSD, you will require. Not in ASD, but in VSD. In PDA, you will require to give infective endocarditis prophylaxis. In any patient having prosthetic heart valves.
Okay.
Okay. And in patients even of repair, even if you have repaired, done annuloplasty, or you have done some wall repair, you should give infective endocarditis prophylaxis. Okay. And patients undergoing dental procedures with cardiac lesions, or patients undergoing genitourinary or respiratory procedures or GI procedures having a cardiac disease, which I mentioned, all the lists which I mentioned just now. So you should give a IE prophylaxis. Okay. So a treatment in your patient, surgical treatment in your patient would be?
Wall replacement surgery.
Wall replacement surgery. Okay.
Surgery.
And so what is the age of the patient?
Sir, 22 years.
22 years. 22 years you are saying?
Yes, sir.
Or 52 years?
Sir, no, 22 years.
22 years. So he's a young patient. So which wall you will give, bioprosthetic or metallic?
So preferably bioprosthetic wall, because he would need lifelong anticoagulation therapy for metallic wall. So
but bioprosthetic wall will last only for 5 years or 10 years, and then after that it will degenerate and patient will require surgery. So you will have to give metallic prosthetic wall only, and the patient will be on anticoagulant lifelong. Okay. So any questions you have regarding your case?
Sir, in case there was syncope in this patient, what would we suspect?
if there was syncope, you can get syncope more in AS rather than AR. But it could be AS with AR also, or patient is having some arrhythmias. Why you are having arrhythmias in aortic stenosis or aortic regurgitation? Why you get
So
arrhythmias?
because of the dilatation of the left atrium enlargement, so stretching of it can create ectopic foci, and that would lead to arrhythmias.
Apart from that, there is calcification of the wall. Once there is calcification of the wall, the calcification also moves into the interventricular septum where there is your conduction system.
Okay.
And whenever the conduction system gets calcified, you can get bradyarrhythmias.
Okay.
And one of the important cause is bradyarrhythmias because of calcification of the conduction system in the interventricular septa.
Okay.
And therefore you can get syncopal episodes also. Okay.
Okay. Yes, sir.
So any other query you have?
Sir, one more is, sir, for this condition, can any congenital heart disease be a differential diagnosis?
Yes, since the patient is a young 22-year-old male, bicuspid aortic wall can also be considered in this patient. So you have to rule out bicuspid aortic wall. Okay. And this bicuspid aortic wall can lead to AS more commonly, but you can have AR also in bicuspid aortic wall. Or you can have AS with AR both in bicuspid aortic wall because there is inappropriate coaptation of the aortic walls.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Then, so any other query?
Sir, sir, there are 2-3 people who have raised hands. Sir, should I ask them to unmute?
What you can do is you can collect their queries and I'll answer them in one single video or in one single meeting. I can answer.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes,
so thank you for the case, and it was the case was well presented, and it was good for MBBS level. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you. So we'll end the meeting now.